My sister-in-law's voice cut through the kitchen like something sharp. We were at the family gathering, the kind where everyone pretends everything is fine. I was helping with dessert, doing what I always did. Making things easier. Making things work. You know, Victoria said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm not sure you should keep coming around like this. You're not really family. The room went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet. The kind where everyone suddenly finds their shoes very interesting. I stood there holding a wooden spoon. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at her and nodded slowly. Okay, I said. That was all. One word. But inside, something shifted. Something I couldn't take back. My name is Piper and I'm 32 years old. I'm the kind of person people call reliable. Steady. The one who shows up. But that day, standing in that kitchen, I realized something. Being reliable doesn't always mean you're valued. Victoria had been saying things like this for years, but never out loud. Never in front of people. This time felt different. This time she meant it. Or maybe I finally heard it for what it was. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment. The words kept replaying. Not really family. I had been going to family events for over a decade. I had been there for births and illnesses and crises nobody else wanted to handle. But apparently, that didn't matter. I pulled out my phone. My brother Marcus, Victoria's husband, hadn't said a word about it. He never did when his wife was cruel. The whispers started after that day. I could feel them. At the next family gathering, people were different, more cautious. My sister-in-law had done something clever. She had planted doubt. I watched people's eyes when they looked at me now. Not unkind, exactly. Just questioning. Like they weren't sure anymore whether I belonged. My cousin Aaron pulled me aside one afternoon. Hey, Victoria's been saying some things, he said quietly. She says you've been overstepping. Acting like you're part of the family when you're, you know. He trailed off, uncomfortable. When I'm what? I asked. He didn't answer. That was the problem. He didn't know what Victoria meant either. But he believed her anyway. That's when I realized how powerful silence could be. Victoria wasn't just being mean. She was rewriting history. She was telling people I had pushed my way in. That I had forced connections that didn't belong to me. That I was an outsider pretending to be inside. The other family members didn't disagree with her. They just stopped inviting me to things. My aunt mentioned a Sunday dinner in a way that made it clear I wasn't expected. My uncle avoided eye contact. Even my brother seemed embarrassed when I mentioned upcoming events. I started noticing small things. Group texts that I wasn't included in. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Stories shared at family dinners that nobody had told me about. It was like being slowly erased. Like everyone had decided, without saying it out loud, that Victoria was right. I didn't belong. I wasn't real family. But I remembered when things were different. When I was younger, before I fully understood the weight of family loyalty, I was there. I was always there. My brother Marcus had married Victoria 12 years ago, and she had been welcomed by everyone. She was beautiful and charming, and she made my brother happy. At first, anyway. I remembered her calling me during her second year of marriage. She was crying. Marcus had been working too much. She felt alone. I drove over immediately. I sat with her in the living room, making tea, listening to her problems for hours. You're the only one who understands, she had said, gripping my hand. I felt needed that day. I felt like I mattered. Over the years, there were many days like that. Victoria would have problems with Marcus, with her job, with her family. And I would be there. I would listen. I would offer advice. I would help fix things. I missed my best friend's birthday party to help Victoria through a work crisis. I postponed my own plans to babysit her children when she wanted to go out. I helped her decorate her house. I listened to her complain about Marcus 1,000 times. And for a long time, she seemed grateful. She would hug me. She would tell me how much I meant to her. You're like a sister to me, she used to say. I believed her. I thought we were building something real. Looking back now, I could see the exact moment it changed. It was subtle. A comment here, a coldness there. But it was there. The first real exclusion came about 5 years into their marriage. Marcus and Victoria were going on a trip, a big trip to Europe. A once-in-a-lifetime vacation. Victoria had spent weeks planning it, showing me pictures, talking about how excited she was. I was expecting an invitation. I wasn't expecting to be asked. Not really, but I thought maybe. Maybe they'd want me there. Maybe Victoria's gratitude for all the support I'd given her would translate into including me in something special. Instead, I found out about the trip when my aunt mentioned it at a family dinner. How wonderful that Victoria and Marcus are finally taking time for themselves, she had said. Victoria was sitting right there. She didn't say anything. She just smiled and took a sip of her wine. I asked Marcus about it later, alone in the kitchen. I wasn't sure you'd want to go, he said. It's kind of a couple's thing. Fair enough. I understood that. But then there was the Christmas party. Victoria had thrown a huge party at their house. I had helped her set up. I brought wine and dessert. I helped serve food all night, stepping back quietly when other people arrived, making myself useful instead of noticed. Near the end of the night, Victoria was showing people photos of their Europe trip on her laptop. Everyone gathered around. I stood on the edge of the group, looking at the pictures she was so proudly displaying. When she noticed me watching, she closed the laptop and stood up. Well, she said brightly, I think it's getting late. People should probably head home soon. The message was clear. I had overstayed my welcome. Over the years, the exclusions grew bigger. The indifference grew deeper. One day, their youngest son, my nephew Connor, broke his arm at school. Marcus called me in a panic. Can you come? I'm stuck at work. The school called. Victoria's at some appointment and she's not answering her phone. I was there in 20 minutes. I took Connor to the hospital. I sat with him while they took x-rays. I held his hand during the hard moments. I drove him home and got him settled. When Victoria finally showed up at home, she thanked me briefly and then asked me to leave. We have it from here, she said. Thanks for handling the emergency. Handling the emergency. Not thanks for being there. Not, I don't know what we'd do without you. Just thanks for handling something inconvenient. But I kept showing up. At birthday parties and school events. At holidays and normal Sundays. Because that's who I was. That's what I did. I showed up. The pattern became so normal that I almost didn't see it. Victoria would be cold when it was just us. Distant when Marcus wasn't looking. But as soon as he came into a room, she'd soften. She'd smile. She'd touch his arm. With me, there was nothing. Just a kind of polite emptiness. I started making excuses to leave early. Started showing up less often. Started convincing myself that maybe Victoria was right. Maybe I didn't belong there. Maybe I was forcing something that wasn't real. The worst part wasn't the exclusion. It was the narrative she built around it. One day, my aunt pulled me aside. Victoria mentioned that you've been kind of pushy, she said gently. She said you're always trying to insert yourself into family stuff. Is everything okay? I was shocked. Pushy? I've been going to family events that we all go to. She said it feels like you're overstepping, my aunt continued. Like you're trying to be more family than you actually are. I started paying attention after that. I heard the stories Victoria told about me. How I was always inserting myself into conversations. How I was desperate for attention. How I acted like I had more of a claim on the family than I actually did. The worst part was that nobody directly contradicted her. They just believed her. Or they didn't want to get involved. Marcus certainly didn't defend me. When I asked him about it, he looked uncomfortable. Victoria just has her feelings, he said. Try not to take it personally. Try not to take it personally. As if my sister-in-law publicly questioning my place in the family was something I should just let roll off my back. But I did try. I tried so hard. I tried being less present, less helpful, less eager. I thought maybe if I gave Victoria space, if I stopped trying so hard, she'd see that I wasn't trying to force my way in. Instead, she seemed to relax. She smiled more. She became nicer to me in small ways. Like she had won something. Like she had successfully pushed me into a smaller place in the family and was satisfied with how small that place had become. One night, about 2 years before Victoria made her public announcement, something happened that changed everything. I was at my brother's house for a birthday dinner, an event Victoria had specifically told me about and invited me to. That part was important. She had invited me. I wasn't pushing my way in. But as people arrived, I noticed something odd. Family members were acting strange. When they saw me, they seemed confused, like they hadn't expected me to be there. My uncle pulled Marcus aside. I overheard him ask, "I thought Victoria said it was just family?" Just family, as if I wasn't. Marcus didn't respond to that question. Instead, he changed the subject. But I had heard it, and it had cut deeper than anything Victoria could have said directly. That night, I made myself small. I helped cook. I cleaned up. I made sure I was useful so that nobody could complain I was just taking up space. But inside, something broke. For the first time, I let myself consider something I had been avoiding. What if Victoria was right? What if I wasn't really family? What if I had been forcing something that was never meant to be? The thought should have crushed me. Instead, it made me curious, because there was something that didn't add up. Victoria was so determined to push me out. She was so careful to rewrite my role in the family. She was so invested in making sure everyone knew I didn't belong. Why would someone care that much if it didn't matter? I started noticing inconsistencies, small things that didn't quite make sense. For years, Victoria had been adamant about who was real family and who wasn't. She used that phrase carefully, strategically. She would make comments about bloodlines and true connections, about who really belonged and who was just attached. But sometimes, when she was talking to other people and didn't think I was paying attention, she'd slip. She'd say things that contradicted her narrative. She'd mention knowing things about family history that didn't quite align with what she was telling me. One day, she mentioned a family photo album that my grandmother had kept. She was talking to my aunt and she said something like, "That picture of all the kids really shows the resemblance. Don't you think?" But I had never seen that photo album. And more importantly, Victoria didn't usually talk about family connections like that. She usually went the other direction. I started asking careful questions, not accusations, just questions, casual ones, about family history, about who looked like whom, about where certain traditions came from. My aunt seemed happy to talk about it. She started telling stories about the family that I had never heard, stories that included me in ways I didn't expect. And then something she said made me pause. "You look so much like Gran," she mentioned. It's amazing how some of those features just jump through generations. What features? I had never thought about looking like my grandmother. But now that my aunt mentioned it, I could see it. In the photos, in the way my hands shaped when I held something, in the structure of my face, details I had never really studied before suddenly seemed important. I made a decision that I kept entirely to myself. I started researching DNA testing kits, not to prove anything, not to use against anyone. I told myself I was just curious. I was just protecting the family. If something was wrong with the family history, shouldn't someone know? The truth was more complicated. The truth was that Victoria's certainty was making me uncertain. And I needed to know. I needed to know if I was actually who I thought I was. I ordered the test using a different email address. I told myself it was to keep my privacy. But really it was so nobody would know what I was doing. So nobody would judge me for questioning things that didn't need questioning. When the kit arrived, I almost didn't open it. I let it sit on my kitchen counter for 3 days, sealed in its plain brown box. My stomach twisted every time I looked at it. This was crazy. This was paranoid. This was the kind of thing people did when they were desperate to prove something. And I wasn't desperate. I was just curious, right? But I wasn't just curious. I was hurt. And hurt people do strange things. I finally opened the kit on a Wednesday night. The instructions were straightforward. A swab of my cheek. A sample sent to a lab. Results in 4 to 6 weeks. I followed the instructions carefully. I sealed everything. I submitted my sample. And then I waited, and tried not to think about what answers I was actually looking for. The next big exclusion came about a month later, which was perfect timing, because I was already emotionally fragile. Victoria called a family gathering. Well, she didn't call me. She called everyone else, and I found out about it from my cousin when he mentioned it casually, like I would obviously know about it. I did what I always did. I called Marcus and asked if I should come. "Victoria's organizing this one," he said carefully. "Maybe ask her?" So I texted Victoria. "I heard about the family gathering. Should I come?" She took 6 hours to respond. Then, this one is really just for close family. I think it might be better if you sit this one out. Close family. The words stung more than they should have. I didn't respond to her text. I just sat with it, let myself feel it. And then, for the first time, I didn't change my mind and show up anyway. I stayed home. My cousin called me later that night, confused. You didn't come? Victoria said you were choosing not to show up. Is everything okay? And just like that, I understood. Victoria wasn't just excluding me. She was rewriting that exclusion as my choice. I wasn't being pushed out. I was choosing to stay away. That was a much cleaner narrative, much harder for people to defend me against. If I had shown up anyway, I would be the pushy one, forcing myself into places I wasn't wanted. If I stayed away, I was the one making the unkind choice to exclude myself from family time. Either way, Victoria won. That night, I checked my email. Nothing from the DNA lab yet. I told myself it was fine. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I had made a mistake ordering that test because I didn't need answers to questions I didn't really have. But I was lying to myself, and I knew it. I made a choice after that. I would still show up to events, but I would be strategic about it. I would stay quiet. I would be helpful. I would prove, without saying anything, that Victoria's narrative wasn't true, that I wasn't desperate, that I wasn't pushing, that I was simply family. And if I was family, they couldn't deny that without looking at themselves. So I went back to what I did best. I showed up. I helped. I made myself useful. And I waited. I waited for the DNA results. I waited for Victoria to overreach one more time. I waited for something to shift. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day, I checked my email. Nothing. Every night, I'd think about what the results might say. Would they confirm what Victoria was saying? Would they show that I didn't belong? Or would they show something else entirely? My therapist, yes, I had started seeing a therapist by this point, asked me what I was hoping the results would say. I don't know, I admitted. I think you do, she said gently. What would make you feel validated? I didn't answer her, but I knew the answer. Anything that proved Victoria was lying. Anything that proved I wasn't crazy for feeling like I belonged. Anything that proved that the family connection I had been building for 12 years was real. But what if the results didn't say that? What if the DNA showed something unexpected? Something that made Victoria's cruelty make sense? I wasn't sure I wanted to know that answer. 5 weeks after I submitted my sample, my email dinged. The results were ready. I was at work. I stared at the notification for an hour before I opened it. Then I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall to read it properly. My hands were shaking. Everything I thought I knew about myself was about to either be confirmed or destroyed. This little DNA report held the power to rewrite my entire family story. I took a breath, and I opened the email. The results were clear, undeniable, biological. I was family. I was blood family. I was connected to the family line in a way that Victoria's words could never change. I sat there in that bathroom stall and I cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from anger, from all the emotions I had been holding back for years. But I didn't screenshot anything. I didn't show anyone. I simply closed the email and sat with the knowledge. This was my secret. This was my truth. And when the moment was right, it would come out. I didn't download the details, didn't save the document, didn't even look at the specific genetic matches. It didn't matter. I knew what I needed to know. And now I was ready to wait for Victoria to make her mistake. It came 3 weeks later. Victoria had organized the family's biggest annual gathering, the summer celebration. Everyone was invited, everyone except me, technically. I knew, because of the same pattern that had been playing out for years. But this time, I didn't ask Marcus if I should come. I simply texted Victoria directly. What time should I arrive? She didn't respond for 2 days. When she finally did, she was curt. Family only. I thought we had been clear about this. Family only. I had known she was going to say something cruel, but seeing it written out felt different. Felt final. Like she was putting her stake in the ground, drawing a line, declaring war. I didn't respond to her text. Instead, I called my brother Marcus. I got Victoria's message, I said. About the family gathering being family only. Marcus sighed. Piper, I just want to understand, I continued, my voice completely calm. Who exactly counts as family in this scenario? You know it's complicated. Actually, I don't think it is, I said. I think it's very simple. I'm either family or I'm not. He didn't answer. I'll be there, I said. Saturday at 3. If I'm not welcome, Victoria can tell me to my face. Saturday arrived with perfect weather and terrible timing for everyone except me. The gathering was at their house. Big backyard event. 30 family members milling around. Picnic tables. String lights. The kind of gathering I had helped Victoria plan for the last 5 years, giving advice, helping with decorations, making it all work. This time I didn't help. I just arrived at 3 o'clock wearing a blue dress that made me look confident. Because I felt confident now. I had a secret. I had proof. The moment I walked through the gate, I could feel the tension shift. People's eyes went to Victoria. She had gone very still. I walked directly to the picnic area where she was standing, talking to my aunt. I smiled at both of them. Hi, I said simply. Thanks for having me. Victoria's jaw tightened. We actually asked you not to come to this one. I know, I said, but I'm here anyway. I hope that's okay. People were watching now, not being subtle about it, just watching to see what would happen next. Victoria smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the smile of someone who had decided this was the moment to win once and for all. Piper, she said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, I think we need to be honest about something. You've been trying to insert yourself into this family for years, and it's not fair to anyone. You're not really one of us. You never have been. The words landed like stones in still water. Everyone went quiet. You're a nice person, she continued, and her tone was almost kind, which made it worse. But you have to understand that blood family is blood family, and you're just not. I looked at her. I looked at the people around us. I saw my cousin Aaron's uncomfortable expression. I saw my aunt's sadness. I saw my uncle literally backing away, not wanting to be near this confrontation. And I felt something crystallize inside me. Actually, I said quietly, I think we should talk about blood family. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. A tiny moment of uncertainty. Because I took a DNA test, I continued. I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't being dramatic. I was just stating facts. About 2 months ago, when I started wondering why you were so invested in proving I didn't belong. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. The results came back last week, I said. I pulled out my phone. I had downloaded the results that morning, just in case. And as it turns out, I'm not just family. I'm biological family, direct descendant of the family line. The shock on her face was worth everything. That's impossible, Victoria said, but her voice was shaking now. You're lying. I'm not, I said. I held up my phone, showing the results. Not to her, she didn't deserve that clarity, but to everyone else. To my family. I have the documentation. DNA doesn't lie, and neither do I. My aunt made a small sound. Piper, what does this mean? It means, I said, still calm, still measured, that every word Victoria has said about me not being real family was based on something she knew that I didn't. And instead of telling me, she spent years trying to push me out. This doesn't prove anything, Victoria said, but she was backing away now. DNA tests aren't always. They are, I interrupted. In this case, they are. I'm matched with multiple family members on the database. I have a 99.9% match with several people here. So if I'm not family, then neither are you, because you don't share that genetic connection. The realization rippled through the crowd like something physical. Victoria had spent years building a narrative about bloodlines and real family. And now, with a few sentences and a DNA result, that narrative was destroyed. I wasn't the outsider trying to force my way in. I was the person who actually belonged. My cousin Aaron looked at Victoria like he was seeing her for the first time. My aunt had tears in her eyes. My uncle had moved closer, not away. I don't understand, my aunt said to me. Why didn't you know this about yourself? Because I grew up thinking I knew my family's story, I said. And I trusted the people who were telling me that story. It wasn't until someone started really pushing me away that I started asking questions. Victoria's face had gone pale. She looked around, trying to find an ally, finding none. "This is ridiculous," she said, but her voice was small now. "This doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," I said quietly. "It changes the narrative, and it changes what I'm willing to accept from you." I could see the moment Victoria understood that she had lost. It wasn't a loud moment. There was no dramatic scene. No one yelled at her or turned on her. It was just that her authority, the authority she had built on the lie that I didn't belong, simply evaporated. People started looking at her differently, not with anger, just with the realization that she had known something and chosen cruelty instead of honesty. My brother Marcus looked like he was going to say something, but he didn't. He just stood there, watching his wife's confident facade crumble. And I felt something unexpected. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad, because Victoria had chosen this. She could have just been kind. She could have just included me. She could have just been the good person she had pretended to be for so long. Instead, she had chosen to lie. And now everyone knew. "I'm going to head out," I said to the group, pocketing my phone. "Enjoy the gathering." I turned to leave. No drama. No more words. Just turning around and walking away while everyone watched. That was more powerful than anything else I could have done. The aftermath was inevitable, but it wasn't as explosive as I had imagined. Victoria tried to damage control. She called people. She sent emails. She tried to reframe what had happened, but nobody was listening anymore. Because I had walked away without making a scene. I had simply told the truth and left. In the story I had given them, I was the calm one, the honest one. Victoria was the person who had built a house of lies. My aunt called me the next day. "Piper, I need to understand what's happening. What did that DNA test actually show? How are you related to us?" So I told her. I showed her the documentation. I explained what I had learned. And more importantly, I asked her what she knew. She was quiet for a long time. "There's something your grandmother never told anyone," she finally said. "Something complicated about your grandfather and his relationship status before he married your grandmother. Something that resulted in you exist because of that." The pieces clicked into place. I wasn't just family. I was the result of something my family had hidden for decades. Victoria had known or suspected, and instead of being honest, she had made it her mission to erase me. "Thank you for telling me," I said. The family reassessed everything after that. My uncle started inviting me to family dinners specifically. My cousin Aaron apologized for believing Victoria's narrative without questioning it. My aunt became closer to me than she had been in years, like she was making up for the years of exclusion. And Marcus? He left Victoria. Not immediately, but about 6 months later, he did. The reason, I suspect, was that he realized Victoria had known something about my family connection the whole time and had chosen cruelty instead of honesty. That's the thing about lies. They don't just hurt the person you're lying to. They poison everything they touch. Victoria tried to talk to me once after that. She wanted to apologize. She wanted to explain. But I didn't have space for her explanation. I had already moved past her. "I forgive you," I told her when she approached me at a family event months later. "But I don't need your apology. I just need you to understand that kindness was always an option. And you chose something else. Here's what people don't understand about silence. They think silence is weakness. They think it means you're not fighting back. But silence is one of the most powerful tools you have. When you're calm and honest and quiet, you give people space to hear themselves, to realize how they sound, to see themselves the way others see them. I stopped showing up with explanations. I stopped trying to prove my worth. I just was. And my presence, my calm acceptance of my family connection, spoke louder than any argument I could have made. Victoria had built her narrative on the assumption that I would either fight back or disappear. She hadn't expected me to just exist peacefully, knowing who I was, regardless of what she said. That was my real power. And I used it not to punish her, but to transform myself. I stopped needing Victoria's validation. I stopped needing anyone's validation. I knew who I was. My DNA had literally confirmed it. The consequences for Victoria were real, but they were quiet. She became isolated, not because anyone actively pushed her away, but because people were less willing to believe her narratives now. If she had lied about me, what else had she lied about? Her marriage fell apart. Her relationship with the family became strained. She eventually moved away, as far as I know. But I didn't celebrate that. I just acknowledged it. I stopped going to every family event, but not because I felt unwelcome, because I finally understood the difference between showing up out of obligation and showing up out of genuine desire to be there. I showed up when I wanted to. I declined when I didn't. I set boundaries that actually protected me instead of just serving the family's needs. And you know what? The family respected that. They respected me more when I stopped giving them everything they asked for. Life after that was different, quieter, better. I got a promotion at work. I started seeing my therapist less frequently because I didn't need to process family trauma every week anymore. I began a new relationship with someone who saw me clearly and valued me consistently. The DNA test had given me more than biological confirmation. It had given me permission to trust myself, to trust my instincts about who I was and where I belonged. People sometimes ask me if I regret how I handled it. If I wish I had just told Victoria to her face earlier. If I wish I had fought back with anger instead of calm. But I don't regret it, because I learned something important. Strength doesn't have to announce itself. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to make scenes or demands. Real strength is knowing who you are and standing in that truth quietly. It's walking away from people who hurt you, not in anger but in peace. It's choosing kindness even when you have every reason not to. And it's understanding that the most powerful thing you can do sometimes is simply belong. Not because anyone gave you permission, but because you always had the right. The DNA test confirmed what I had always known inside. I was family. I was loved. I was enough. And nobody, not even Victoria, could take that away.